My wonderful, beautiful, amazing followers, fledglings, to all humans who haven't subscribed but who probably came across this channel or this video and by pure, unexpected, unforeseen circumstance or miraculous moments and stuff like that. But I'm Gabriella from Gabriella's Vampire Tarot. For today, I'm actually going to be talking a little bit about, the symbolism and like the themes and stuff like that about what vampires are all about, because the human and I, or my human familiar, he and I, we've been more or less is kind of, coming across different types of historical facts and stuff like that. So the thing about these historians is they don't always give out names and stuff like that. They just only say some historians say this and others say this. So to be honest, I can't really give out, like names because I've never really come across them and stuff like that. But I know that there are historians out there. If they are the same, I mean, I don't really know exactly the original sources, but I will actually tell you guys a couple of themes, that actually sort of correlate, but maybe there are a couple things that I mostly also disagree with because of the moments I've never experienced and the other, moments that could come across as a bit too stereotypical and stuff like that. So, but anyway, so, like these historians, they were talking about how vampires are incredibly charismatic and seductive. Okay, well, I'm not so sure if you guys were ever, seduced by me or if you even find me charismatic and stuff like that. I mean, I think when it comes to like vampires and charisma or even in the form of seducing somebody, it's mostly in the stereotypical manner, I think. When they actually want to when they want their prey to approach them or when they want to approach their prey, of course, for the blood drinking part and maybe other problems and stuff like that. But I feel like that it's mostly, it could be, considered seductive because the vampire who turned me, I don't know if he was literally seducing me in other ways, but I do know that I was just so drawn towards him. It's like my mind was just telling me, Gabriella, leave the tarot shop right now. It's like this person is this unknown, figure deity. You've never come across them. Most of your customers, who've come in for tarot readings, but this person was just so out of this world. I've never, ever come across this dark figure. And the thing was, is when I say dark, because I just felt the sense of like uneasiness, but yet I was still drawn towards it. Maybe he was definitely, seducing me or something, or maybe it was just his nature in other ways, where he just has always had this drawn vibe about him. I mean, this dark vibe, that draws one towards, him in other ways and stuff like that. But, it's like these movies and TV shows, they kind of, I feel like they go a bit overboard when it comes to, like, the seductive moments, because, and, let's say you see Dracula, for example, he holds out his hand to, the woman, his future bride, or whoever, maybe guy out there, I mean, and the person is just so, like, in a trance, just walking towards them on their own volition, and then they say, yeah, well, they went on their own volition. Yes, I just only held out my hand, but, of course, were you actually maybe putting some kind of spell or using some kind of magic? Of course, that's just only pure, imaginative thinking, to think of magic and all kinds of like energies, where you just think, oh yeah, it's like he just held out his hand and I was just in such a trance and stuff like that. But anyway, and then we get over to, a couple of historians that talk about the forbidden romance. And of course, it's like with any kind of like vampire human love connections and stuff like that, a lot of humans, they pretty much just think, ooh, that's just something a little bit unusual, right? It's like for vampire and human, it's like the forbidden, anything that's, it's like, when you want to actually have that sweet treat or whatever it is, and and before your big meal, for example. I mean, I don't know too much about it, but that's what the human was telling me about how when he was young, he used to crave like cookies and stuff like that before his parents, mother, father would make dinner for him and stuff like that, and then he would sometimes like he'll sneak the forbidden snack and stuff like that. I mean, I don't know, to be honest. I just feel like romance is romance in my book. I mean, well, is it forbidden? No, I don't find it forbidden, for any person to have any kind of attraction towards anything. It's like, was I attracted to the vampire? Not really. I was just more intrigued. So, and then we get to, another more or less stereotypical theme about the power and strength, that some of these historians were talking about is that they're incredibly fast, they're incredibly strong, everything, all of them can read minds, all of them can do all kinds of stuff. But then, behind the scenes of these movies and TV shows, you just see these harnesses being used to accentuate, and they use all these other kinds of like technology. Yeah, technology, is that what they're called? Technology devices to accentuate the speed and strength of a vampire. Ooh, okay. Well, I don't really consider myself strong, though. I probably might be stronger than the human familiar, but I've never really had to prove my strength, to him because, I don't know, maybe he, I mean, I was always very cautious about, anything, that had to do with any kind of, physical, touch and stuff like that. I mean, no, I've never bitten him in any way, even though he probably, would have wanted that, of course. But of course, it's like, be careful what you wish for. Because, yeah, it's like a vampire's hunger is quite strong when. I mean, I will actually admit that when I'm hungry or thirsty, it just is so powerful that, sometimes it even takes about maybe 2 blood packs, but I'm not going to go into too much, depth about that, about my hunger and stuff like that, but it is quite powerful, so maybe that is what is actually historically accurate and stuff like that. And the thing is, eternal youth and beauty, okay, I can see how they can pretty much see it like that because, we hardly go out or we never go out into the sun. I mean, I will tell you actually an interesting, when I read or, read the Casket Girls, what was it, by Alice Arden or something. I would have to verify everything and stuff like that. There was an interesting moment where this vampire, I mean, I don't want to give out any spoilers and stuff like that, but I'm just only going to mention one thing, is when this vampire was talking about, how he's able to survive in the sun for 30 minutes, and no longer and stuff like that. I mean, if they're called daywalkers, I mean, I don't know really enough about it because I personally burn in the sun. But it was interesting, and how when the heroine or whoever the main girl is, was asking him about all these vampiric things, it was interesting because the vampire was so incredibly vague, about how they came about and stuff like that. And that's kind of the thing, is you don't know where it's actually from. I mean, I know I don't know where it's from, and I know that other characters in these vampire movies and stuff like that have also just wondered, where does it come from? Does it come from, yeah, anything negative, anything bad? Am I really, actually, I mean, they even say that vampires were from fallen angels or something. I mean, I don't know enough about it, well, to really know if that is historically accurate or not, or if that even means anything and stuff like that. But, and then, of course, but then, when we talk about like maybe ancient historical facts, if you guys know anything about the ancient, Mesopotamia, and how, they had different types of creatures, that also were considered dead and roamed the earth, seeking harm and vengeance, but they were not alive and stuff like that. It's like, it's interesting how, when we think about the history of how some creatures crave blood, because this is what is historically, or what is actually factually accurate, is there is a type of bat called the Dracula bat, I recall, and the Dracula bat does live off of blood sources. So it's like these bats, and I think, where would they be? I would have to verify all of this stuff because it was just all over the place, and if it's actually historically accurate where they're precisely located, maybe they're still migrating all over. I mean, I can't really say and stuff like that, but it's interesting how when we think about the Dracula bat, how they live off of actual like animal blood, maybe even human blood. I mean, I don't think even anything. I mean, I do turn into a bat, so if you guys ever get a chance to watch my previous Halloween video, and I will actually will have this upcoming Halloween video as well, when I was actually talking about, if you see a bat flying around, it is most likely me, and if you want to actually pay homage to me, just we'll throw some rose petals or roses at me and stuff like that. So I mean, and then of course we think about the ancient Greece, how You know, there were also several vampiric creatures, you know, that also, you know, were considered mostly, you know, female demons that would seduce and prey on travelers and stuff like that. I mean, all of these historians and stuff like that, when they actually think about, you know, these creatures that roam Earth and crave blood and stuff like that, I mean, the problem is, you know, it's like, it's quite stereotypical. Maybe it's actually historically accurate, but I feel like that, you know, there was actually a couple of women that I've actually come across during my journey. You know, they don't know that I was a vampire because this was like maybe like 50, 100 years ago and stuff like that. I mean, well, time, you know, has no meaning to me. So that's one aspect about being a vampire, is that every day is practically the same and time means nothing because you do remain the same for many years and stuff like that. But, is that some people, and especially for women, they suffer from iron loss, you know, due, well, to, you know, like, yeah, you know, well, their monthly, you know, purge as the human, you know, calls it and stuff like that. And the thing is, you know, it's like a lot of women, you know, they also, you know, they tend to, they will crave like, iron, whether it's from like meat products or whether it's from any other kind of iron, you know, rich, you know, like, vegetables or something. I mean, I don't know enough about it, but I know that I've actually come across a couple of women that just look so peaked and pale, and then I was really thinking, you know, did the other vampire, you know, come across, like, you know, these poor women and stuff like that, you know, and then I would sometimes look around, you know, their neck or even their wrist just to make sure that, you know, that they didn't get attacked or, you know, in other ways, but then they were just 100% fine, except they would pretty much be losing a lot of iron. Well, sad but true and stuff like that, and that's why I admire a lot of humans, you know, that want to support other humans by donating blood. I know that I'm not really the best, you know, a creature out there to be actually supportive of that in other ways, but the thing is I do try to keep my feedings very minimal because I know that there's hundreds of humans out there that would definitely benefit from blood packs and other ways and stuff like that. So, but I will pretty much also have a separate, you know, a video while talking about, you know, how blood is considered like our life force, unless some of these historians, I mean, for example, you know, the symbols in vampire novels, you know, blood is the most important symbol linked to vampires. It stands for life, energy, primal instincts, and when vampires drink blood, it shows power, control, and the sharing of life force. Well, is that true? I can't, you know, speak for everyone, or especially even myself, on that aspect, because the thing is blood, you know, is definitely my sustenance. You know, I can't live off of anything else and stuff like that. I mean, I even tried this raw steak once, and it about made me sick. I mean, I'm sorry, I don't want to go too much detail about some of these past things, but I will say that some of these things are just stereotypical, and that's why on the human, I think the first time we ever met each other, you know, it's like he was just even asking me, you know, if there was any kind of like substitutes and stuff like that. He was even coming up with alternative substitutes, and I was thinking, well, you know, it's like kind and nice about it, but the thing is substitutes, unless there's actually a real good historical background to be verifying that this will pretty much, you know, take away my hunger and thirst and stuff like that. Well, not always. So that's one aspect. But anyway, it's like, you know, the history of blood is really important and stuff like that. And especially, you know, how a lot of, or, you know, how vampires like like myself, we need the night to survive. And I did actually try to see if I could walk during the day, but then I just burned myself intensely. So I just think, and that's why I also, and during summertime especially, like to wear my gloves because it adds for an extra protection. And I do have my parasol that I keep with me even in the evenings and stuff like that, just as a little extra precaution. You know, it's like, because yeah, being burned is not as nice, and I'm sure you guys have probably experienced similarities. But anyway, it's interesting because, you know, it's like you know, about the new moon and even the full moons and stuff like that. Historians were talking about how, you know, the full moon often also, you know, talks about, you know, primal urges, and it brings out, you know, your internal animal and stuff like that. But I will actually say one thing, because mostly the moon doesn't have any impact on me, but, you know, at the previous Capricorn moon, something happened. You know, this was something I haven't really ever really, thought or experienced. I mean, maybe it's because, all of these vampiric themes are now have coming more to surface and stuff like that. But the thing is, I suddenly did get this intense craving for blood. And I know, I'm sorry, if this, video or even this channel bothers you tonight, I understand that you pretty much think, nope, this is just too much for me. I can't handle it. 100% your prerogative. It's like, but that's why but I just suddenly got this intense craving, and I was just thinking, well, why am I suddenly getting hit with it? Because the thing is, it's like being, a cardinal sign, stuff like that, and next to even, Capricorn, that's also a cardinal sign. I was just suddenly thinking, wow, I've never really felt something so intense before. So, and then of course, that's how the human and I came across some of these historical, people that were talking about all these types of themes and symbols and stuff like that. Because even like when we talk about crucifixes and stuff like that, it's like that doesn't really bother me. I mean, yeah, I've come across, humans, that wear all kinds of stuff, and I just think, okay, and holy water, I don't think I've ever tried holy water, and I don't think I would ever want to go near holy water in other ways. But the thing is, it's like, of course, it would be so stereotypical, if that were to burn me somehow in other ways and stuff like that. But it's like, it's just really interesting, how some of these historians, and then, but it's really too bad how a lot of these people don't have, like their sources, like when did this take place? Where did it take place? Where did you get your information? How did you actually, come across all these, themes and stuff like that? Is it just because you watch TVs and shows and read books and stuff like that that you say, oh yeah, this is, what the basic average vampire is about, and I think, oh, come on. I mean, maybe they've never come across one, and then they start creating and generating their own ideas and stuff like that to think, okay, they're dark, mysterious, handsome, they're nocturnal, they feed off of blood, they burn in the sun, they burn from all these other things and stuff like that. Okay, that defines them. Well, maybe you just haven't come across a vampire to really verify all of those facts and stuff like that. But then, here's an interesting fact. Because, I never have bitten the human familiar in other ways. But anyway, it's like when we think about the vampire bite. Now, I can actually verify that for myself because I was bitten by a vampire. And the thing is, I really felt like I was under the vampire spell. I mean, do I really believe in it? No, but I was just so too much, I was just so intrigued by this individual that maybe he did put some kind of seductive spell on me. I mean, I don't know. But about the vampire bite, it's considered, by some historians as an act of control and as a submission. And, it's like having that romantic, beautiful kiss between two individuals. It's like it pretty much just accentuates this intimate contact between two individuals. But of course, between the vampire and the victim as myself, it was mostly based off of, how he pretty much wanted to actually have so much control over me. And practically maybe just, just drain me of everything and then just leave me, okay, I've had my, feeding, now on to the next person and stuff like that. I mean, that's why I'm still looking for who and where I can find them. I mean, I do occasionally, sense, darkness and stuff like that, but it's every so often it also kind of disappears and I think, okay, I wonder what's going on here and stuff like that. Is he still around? Is he in his own slumbering chamber, wherever it may be? But then, of course, we get to the coffins and graves and stuff like that. Okay, I do sleep in a coffin, but is that more or less also stereotypical? Maybe. I mean, the thing is I do need to have my sleeping chambers, incredibly just closed off, practically where I'm just only surrounded in a brick wall for that matter. But, the thing is, it's like coffins are considered only for the deceased and people who have passed on, stuff like that, and how vampires are often shown as being undead and sleeping in their traditional coffins and graves and stuff like that. But then again, I have come across some literature, and of course this is probably just purely fiction, where these vampires, they sleep in beds and stuff like that. And I think I have actually slept in a bed. And to be honest, a padded coffin versus a bed, of course, there's a slight difference. But still, to me, it was just, practically the same. But yeah, I do love being in little snug, little areas and stuff like that. I mean, I don't really ever need blankets. I mean, but anyway, that's just kind of only from my little perception and stuff like that. And of course, the reflections and the mirrors. I mean, yeah, you guys can just see me just as clear as day, right? So, well, to say, yeah, vampires, yeah, they don't, cast off like any, of themselves in mirrors and stuff like that. Or even when it comes to silver. I mean, I haven't really, consumed anything or even touched anything with silver, but then again, I think a lot of these themes are just only stereotypical that just come from some general idea of thinking, oh yeah, it's like, yeah, well, because silver is considered, all of this, it has like these components in it and it's supposed to be like this and that and the other stuff like that. And I just think, well, for most part, I just find a lot of historians, to be very stereotypical. But of course, it's like maybe they will personally have never come across a vampire to verify all of their knowledge and all of their, their information gatherings and stuff like that. I mean, and of course, when it comes to water, not just holy water, but that even some of them saying, yeah, that vampires are, well, don't like water or rain and stuff like that. Well, the thing is I've actually, walked through some drizzles and, the only thing that I don't like is that my hair kind of gets wet and stuff like that. But other than that, I'm still around. But yeah, it's just interesting just to come across how some of these people, but still, what just bothers me mostly is that either these people don't give out names, they don't give out time frames, they don't give out, the exact moment or how they even came across these facts and stuff like that. So I just think a lot of these things are just only based off of just their own intuition and feeling and stuff like that. So, but anyway, it was just kind of interesting just to kind of share some of these themes with you guys. I hope you guys enjoyed some of these, historical facts and stuff like that. And of course, but yeah, that's the thing with any kind of sources and stuff like that. It's always really good to see where the source came from, to see who the person was that came up with it, and maybe even see if you could try to reach out to such people if possible, if they're still even around and stuff like that, just to see, yeah, where'd you guys actually find out? Is there actually, because it just only makes me want to actually find or reach these people, and especially if they don't give out names and stuff like that, just to see, have you guys come across a very mysterious, perhaps handsome, vampire male out in this world? Or was it even written by the vampire? I mean, that's the only thing is, it's like they just say historians say this, historians say that, historians came across this, historians did that. But where did they actually get all that information from? But anyway, I just wanted to kind of share, this video with you all out there. And I'm sorry if it came across as maybe a bit too macabre here and there. So, but yeah, we're dealing with a vampire as myself. Okay, fair enough that we're not just only, sparkly individuals and stuff like that, But thank you. I love you guys incredibly. Feel free to join my channel for more historical facts, more Dracula themes, tarot if you want to know more about tarot. And I also have, the website and my price list on it and stuff like that. But anyway, I love you guys incredibly. Thank you so much for at least taking interest in vampires and stuff like that, because we are, definitely heading down towards darker times and stuff like that. So, but thank you. Love you guys incredibly, and best of luck on your voyage, quest, endeavors, wherever it may lead you. Thank you.